Welcome back, one and all. You're listening to the NTC podcast. This is our 38th installment. I'm very happy to be back with you guys on this podcast. Glad to have the chance to talk some ball as we are knee deep in free agency period, all the off season. Summer League starts tomorrow for us, so we're very much looking forward to that. My guest Ali and I are preparing to fly out to Summer League. You guys know Ali by now if you've been listening to this podcast. You know our social media content guy does graphics for NTC, just really good at what he does, pumping out those really informative graphics. So glad to have you back on, Ali. Excited to talk some ball this afternoon, and ready for Summer League, man. We're going to make some things happen this year. It's going to be great.
Very excited, man. Obviously, always down to talk hoops with you. But yeah, come check us out. Come check out the No Trade Clause team. Come say hi, hello, what's good? Come talk hoops with us. We're always down, and check out the website, check out the work. Obviously, we are pumping out, free agency content as we dive into the depths of the off season. But, some pending transactions that may or may not happen. We shall see, but more to come. But everything in the whole league, I guess, and the fans and everyone who works in this business are just holding their breath to see what comes next. So.
Holding their breath on one big domino, man. I think I know what I think you know what I'm referring to when I say a domino needs to fall. That might drag on a little bit here for a little bit longer. So we'll see how that all unfolds, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later. But speaking of dominoes, man, a big one fell last week. I believe it was on Friday, and I remember when this trade dropped. When I saw the Woj notification for this one, I was riding on a cart, so I was a passenger. And my coworker is driving. It's kind of like a golf cart, basically. So we're going back to the admin building. We just finished up some work for the day. See this pop up on my phone while I'm a passenger. I tell you, man, I almost fell off the cart. I was almost a casualty that day. That was rough. Definitely did not see this coming. So just to kind of lay it out for everybody that doesn't know, we're referring to the Timberwolves trade with the Utah Jazz that occurred last week, the Blockbuster trade, which makes for our first topic of this podcast. So I'm just going to get this out of the way, man. When I first saw it, my first reaction, wasn't a huge fan of it for the Timberwolves. I applaud the Jazz. I applaud Danny Ainge for the work that he did in this trade to get all those picks. 5 picks total. If we're including the swap, 5 picks, and we're including Walker Kessler, the 2022 recent draftee that's going to the Jazz. I mean, that's an incredible haul. That's the type of haul that we saw for the PG and Kawhi trade 3 years ago today. As a matter of fact, that trade went down. The Anthony Davis trade had a similar type of vibe when it comes to the number of draft picks involved. The legendary Brooklyn Nets, Boston Celtics deal, which, if I remember correctly, Danny Ainge was also a part of that trade package. So somehow, some way, Danny always finds himself in the biggest trades, at least when it comes to draft capital. So bravo to him for getting all those picks, also including that Royce O'Neal trade that was conducted I think it was the same day or the day before. So he was just accumulating all the picks within 48 hours, basically. And then on the flip side, for the Wolves, I get what they're trying to do. You want to take advantage of Towns' prime. You want to take advantage of the rising talent of Anthony Edwards. You want to give this fan base the opportunity to be a part of a consistent playoff team, which they have not had since the KG era. I respect it. I get it. But at the same time, I have some concerns about the fit, some concerns about the price tag. That's the kind of haul that you see for an all-NBA first or second team, top 10 player in the league type of return. Because it's not like they just got draft picks in return for Gobert. They got Malik Beasley. They got Beverly. They got Leandro Bolmaro, 2020 first-round pick. As I mentioned before, Walker Kessler, Jared Vanderbilt. So, I mean, we're talking about several rotation players in addition to all those picks. Yep. So I would just have some concerns about it. But I have some pros and cons that I'm going to lay out here in a minute. But before I do that, I wanted to kind of pass the baton on to you and see what you thought about this deal. Give me your initial reaction. Give me your gut reaction when it first came across your phone. What are you thinking? Did the Timberwolves get swindled here? Is this a move that you were a fan of just because of what the Wolves are trying to do. Walk me through your thought process here when it comes to breaking down this trade.
Funny you bring that up. Two different reactions at two different times because, as you know, we all have notifications on for Woj and all the newsbreakers as you got to. So when the first tweet dropped, it was just Rudy Gobert going to the Minnesota Timberwolves. That was it. We had no details. So when I saw that, I was like, okay. I mean, wow. First and foremost, wow.
Oh, yeah.
That's a pretty big deal. I mean, this guy's a really great basketball player. I mean, he has done a phenomenal job of building his career in Utah, and he's turned himself into a perennial, all-star candidate, defensive player of the year candidate. You could make an argument that he is the best defensive player in the league. He certainly has, created the term heliocentric defensive player like on his own,
Oh yeah. 100%.
So from that respect, I was like, wow, this is huge, and I immediately thought about the basketball fit. And I immediately thought about how this is, they're doing this to hide the flaws of Karl Anthony Towns. As amazing of a player as he is, as gifted of a player as he is flaws. He has flaws. And one of his flaws is his defensive ability, not only at the rim, but, it just defensive in general. He has a lot of weaknesses on that end. And this allows him to be more of a, last year they played the scheme of, having him hedge hard on pick and rolls, having him switch at times, having him just be more aggressive and allowing him to be less indecisive and creating. Chris Finch put him into this in an environment where the decision was made for him, and he's just going to be more aggressive out on the ball and towards the ball handler. But that leaves the backside, very empty. And now you place Rudy Gobert there. And I think basketball wise, it's going to be a pretty great fit. It's going to be a pretty seamless fit because also, they don't occupy the same spaces on offense, right? And on defense as well. But then the second shoe dropped and the picks. All the picks, man.
Jeez.
Now, this all kind of depends on how you value first round picks, and, to be quite frank, as much as I love Rudy Gobert, this was certainly an overpay. This felt like a very splashy new ownership. I want to, make my imprint on this team. I want to show the league that, hey, we are here to stay. We are going to build off of the momentum of last year, which was awesome. Amazing to see that team, build on that momentum. I like seeing a team take a risk. Like, this is awesome. And I think it teaches us, say what you want about the package, about how much they gave up, about how it may have been a wrong decision. I think it was an overpay. Do I think moving Rudy Gobert or trading for Rudy Gobert is wrong? Absolutely not. Price, I do think that it is a bit much. And we won't see the full result of this trade until a few years later, just like we won't see the full result of the trade with Kawhi and PG down the line. But those are also guys that are just like bona fide, superstars in this league. We know who they are. So I do think that this trade will teach us a lot about how basketball teams are built, how basketball is played now in today's era, because we are seeing teams go big, Cleveland, with their two bigs, we see Boston Celtics playing Horford and Robert Williams. We see Golden State at times playing Draymond Green and Kevon Looney. So we see there are templates around, but this is the first time outside of Cleveland that we are seeing a team fully commit to the Twin Tower lineup. And I think this is going to be a great data point on how we reimagine teams and team building. And, I'm just very excited to see what it's going to look like. But I do have a very optimistic perspective on how it's going to look on the court.
Absolutely, man. First thing to address about what you were saying, the heliocentric nature of his defense. He is a force unto himself on that end. I think that's the number one impact he's going to have on this team. Because like you said, Towns has obvious flaws. A rim protector, he is not. That's never been his calling card. And that showed in the playoffs. When he's the sole big man down low and he goes against some of the Goliaths, he goes against some of these very aggressive big men, even just guards that are aggressive, like John Morant going to the paint, forces him into foul trouble. And that's an obvious detriment to their entire system because Towns is the system, although Edwards is, coming up and doing his own thing as well. But the fact that he is such a deterrent at the rim, not necessarily a shot blocker, although he can block shots. He's always in the top 5 or 10 in blocks per game. But the fact that Gobert drives people away from the paint is such an asset. And I found a quote from Nekias Duncan. He's been posting these articles about how new players might fit with their new teams and free agency. And he mentioned Gobert in his piece, and he said that based on cleaning the glasses numbers, opposing offenses basically have their rim frequency drop by at least 5 percentage points compared to what we usually see from them. So that tells us that teams going to the paint, they see Gobert there, and he doesn't even have to block a shot because his presence by itself is enough to drive people away from the paint. That is a definite advantage and a pro of bringing him into this team. That's going to be a huge benefit. Yeah. Also, he's an elite screen setter. When he's setting screens, he's a brick wall when he is really aggressive and sets his feet. Like, he's tough to get around. He's not huge as far as how wide he is, but he's strong and he has really good fundamentals because he just does it so much. He knows how to set a proper screen. Mm-hmm. So there's only one player in the league that set more screens last season than Gobert, and that was Nikola Vucevic, which is actually kind of surprising to me because I would think that Gobert would be the number one guy. But apparently he's number 2, which is still very good. He set 3,165 screens last season. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's just monumental usage in that respect for Gobert. So, obviously, great screen setter, great rim protector, great rebounder. He's typically in the top 5 every season when it comes to rebounding. And the other thing that I love about this move is the fact that the Wolves are going to be covered down low basically at all times if they want to stagger their minutes. So if you want to go a little bit smaller, you can take Gobert out. You still have Towns. If one of them gets into foul trouble, you still have the other one to man the paint, and you can just kind of downsize from there. You can slide in McDaniels in the 4 if you want to, because he's used to starting. He did last season. Mm-hmm. So they have a lot of options when it comes to their front court rotation, which I love. I mean, there's a lot of great pros here. And think about how potent Russell and Edwards will be going downhill with a guy like Gobert to work with them in the pick and roll. I don't know if you've thought about that aspect of it yet, but that's going to be a deadly pairing when it comes to their pick and roll. Like, that offense is going to be a lot of fun to watch. Getting them those low slides up to them, that's deadly, man. So those are a few of the pros of the deal that kind of stood out to me. There's a lot of reasons I like this move from a basketball standpoint, like you were just talking about.
I'm glad you brought up the screen setting because, with D'Angelo Russell, and I think a lot of point guards in general, and I think, for example, I'll use LaMelo Ball. Like, I think moving on as the franchise continues to develop, and figure out what type of pieces they want around a point guard, right? I think a general manager's decision, and it's based off of the point guard skill set, is do you want a big that is screen setting and popping, or do you want a screen setting and rolling big man? And I think with D'Angelo Russell, you want someone that's going to attack the rim because he isn't the greatest finisher at the rim. He doesn't, his rim frequency is fairly low every single year. That is a weakness of his game. He doesn't get much to the free throw line. So to make up for that, having a presence like Rudy Gobert is going to be phenomenal for him. And also, the lob presence is going to be phenomenal for him as well. I think this is a huge bet on Anthony Edwards' development, that they see him as a future bona fide superstar. I think we both can agree that he has that ability. Like he will probably, get there in some respect. And I am a strong believer in that. But I do think that, when you take a step back and you think about the value assessment of this trade and what they, gave up for Rudy Gobert. And then you think about the candidates that were on the market and then combine that with their needs, right? So with their needs, they felt like we want to play bigger. We want to protect Towns. Great. That's awesome. Phenomenal. What's to say, like, I wonder if they ever thought about, Isaiah Hartenstein, a guy like that who they could have got someone at a great price, the Knicks clearly outbid the Clippers to retain for him, his services. But he's phenomenal at the rim. He's a great passer. He's a little different from Rudy Gobert. He's not the greatest screen, he's a great screen setter, but Rudy Gobert is obviously a brick wall, and both guys have, their pros and cons, but obviously Rudy Gobert is just on a completely different level. So I fully understand that if we want to go big, we go all in. I understand that. But I do wonder that at the absolute highest levels of basketball, because that is where this Wolves team is looking to get to, right? And I think that's the perspective that we all view this team as now, right? Even Rudy Gobert said in his press conference today, I am here to take this team to the finals. I love that confidence. I really do. But I do think about, will they need to play small, at the highest levels of the game? They will need to have some level of lineup switchability. And that's why I really like the Kyle Anderson signing, because I feel like it complements both Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. They could both play. Kyle can play with both guys, and I think that he really brings a level of rim protection, switching, defense, and just overall playmaking, scoring. He's not the greatest scorer in terms of, he's not going to blow by you, but he's going to, in an isolation situation, get you a pretty efficient bucket, when you need it. So, but we won't touch on his shooting. But I do feel like they did a great job of, this is obviously a huge bet on McDaniels as well. He'll be their starting three. And I do think that this is going to be the first time that Rudy Gobert has some pretty adequate perimeter defense. McDaniels, great defender. Anthony Edwards, when dialed in.
He can be.
Great defender.
Yes.
And I do think that he is now going to walk into the season with the mindset of, I can be an all NBA defender if I really wanted to. If he really wanted to, he could do that. So he has to walk into that season with that type of mindset. But I do think that it's better than what Gobert had in Utah. Obviously, Towns, he has his quirks on defense. D'Angelo Russell, he has his quirks on defense. But those three, Gobert, McDaniels, and Edwards, it's up to them to really kind of build the shell of this defense. And I think they're going to be, right up on top of the league, because considering, perennially speaking, these last few years when Gobert was really manning that defense, they were top 10 every year, top 5. I think this past year they were right at that top 10 level. I'm forgetting their exact ranking. But if he's able to take perimeter defenders like that to that level of a defense, then I really do think that, this team is going to take a serious next step. But they are a little light on shooting, but I do think that this is going to be Karl Anthony Towns unleashed. Absolutely unleashed as a passer, as a playmaker, as a perimeter creator. We've seen his game evolve in some pretty fascinating ways. I was looking up his stats in college, and he took 8 threes in college, and in his total season.
That's insane.
Exactly. And so we are going to see him really turn into an offensive hub. At least I think so. And I do wonder how much of the 4-5 pick and roll we might be seeing, how much of Karl Anthony Towns and Gobert, that chemistry, I'm really fascinated to see, because when you have two bigs like that, what you really want is a lot of high-low passing, chemistry in that respect. One guy that's able to shoot, and Towns, to be frank, he's a phenomenal post player. So I do hope that they aren't taking him, or his post game cannibalized because of it.
Absolutely. Like you touched on some of the stuff that kind of leads into my concerns with this team when you
Yeah.
were mentioning the fact that teams want to downsize in the playoffs. And obviously, this is where the team wants to go. You don't invest $100+ million into a player, multiple draft picks, go into the luxury tax, sign these veterans like Kyle Anderson and Taurean Prince just to get to the first round or even the second round. You really want to make a run. So the fact that there is that possibility that those two guys playing together puts them at a disadvantage in certain playoff series gives me pause. Because if you're going to have a guy that you invest so much in like Gobert, and there's certain series where you can't really use him in that way because you're going against a team like, let's say you're playing Golden State, and they could put their lineup in such a configuration that Gobert is not as effective as he would be against another team. Like that, there are concerns on that end that give me a little bit of pause. Now, do want to say again, like I was saying before, like I do respect Tim Conley's attempts to get this team to the next level because it's something they haven't really had very often. That's why we saw Patrick Beverley on the scores table after that win to get them into the playoffs, because like this sort of thing doesn't happen that often. Like this is kind of uncharted territory for this team in a way, if you think about it. So there is the potential to be great. Like you mentioned before, and this is something that really intrigues me. I was thinking about it when putting notes together for this podcast. The fact that Towns and Gobert could run a 4-5 pick and roll, like you just mentioned, very, very interesting. It's the apex of new age basketball. Towns running the pick and roll as a ball handler is something that maybe 5 years ago, we would look at that and say, like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you give it a attempt?
I would argue that 5 years ago, and a little longer than that, prime Blake Griffin, we saw him, run a few pick and rolls with DeAndre Jordan when the spacing got tight, and they ran pet plays just for him. And so the template is there, but
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like it hasn't been done before. Like
Absolutely.
Blake DJ, big man,
Absolutely.
It's been done, but I think it's becoming more like common. So we're seeing big man, and it's not blowing our minds like it used to back in the early 2010s era. It's almost like a natural evolution. It's like, oh, okay, well, you're a solid paint presence. The next step for you now is expand your game to where you can run pick and rolls and you can shoot threes and things of that nature. So it's just really interesting to see that. And specifically for Towns, that you had mentioned earlier as well, that it's going to provide him more opportunities to guard in space, like he'd done this season with the hedging to pick and rolls and things like that. I'm a little bit concerned about that because there are teams that have fours that are very mobile. And Towns is a pretty mobile guy, but he's not exactly the kind of guy that you want to throw on somebody that's a stretch four and have to chase him around the court and things like that. So I think that could be a little bit of a learning curve for him, something that he's going to need to deal with when it comes to guarding in space. He could be a little heavy-footed at times, I've noticed, especially going against some of those smaller guards. So we'll see how that works out. And then also, it's something that Gobert has to deal with. The fact that you can't really dish the ball to Gobert and expect him to go through a post-up by himself and manufacture his own points. It's something he doesn't really do. And something else that Nikias mentioned in that piece was the fact that defenses switch those pick and rolls that Gobert in a lot more often because you could put a small on him and not get torched because he doesn't want to post up. That's not his game. He wants to pick and roll. If he gets it deep enough, he takes a couple dribbles, he gets a hook, he gets a dunk, whatever, gets to the foul line, but he's not really a post-up presence like Towns is. So just a few cons of this pairing that I had seen. None of them are devastating to the point where you could definitely say it won't work. It's just some reservations that I have. And just lastly, the like you had said with acquiring Gobert for all those picks, the value isn't really there. You're paying Gobert not just a max contract. You're paying him super max money, 38 next season, 41 into the 40s of millions of dollars going over the next 3 or 4 years. You're missing out all these picks. And then once you get to 2025, 6, and 7, you're really not going to have those picks. The 26 is a swap. you lose 5 and 7 outright. So if this experiment doesn't work and you're not able to get any kind of draft compensation for Gobert, if you decide to move off him later, you're really kind of stuck. And you end up in a situation to where the Lakers find themselves in. If you have subpar seasons down the line, you don't have those picks to rebuild. You could be stuck in a not ideal place for quite a few years. So I guess to top it off, it's risky, but I do see why it was done. And I do see the merit in conducting this kind of deal. I actually wrote a piece about this a few years ago, but I was basically saying that, like, you have to be bold in the NBA as a general manager to survive.
Yep.
If you don't make the big splashes, you are not really giving yourself a chance to stick around, because you're not really giving that team a real opportunity to improve and compete for a championship. So I get it. I'm a little concerned. I have negative thoughts about it, but it could work out for Minnesota. And I am happy for the fans, because regardless of how it turns out ultimately in the end for them, it's going to be a great season. They're going to be very competitive, very tough to beat, which is more than what you can say about Timberwolves teams for the past 15 years or so. So that's definitely a plus for them.
I agree. I 100% agree. And, just touching on their cap situation, Anthony Edwards will be up for an extension next year. You got Karl Anthony Towns signing his, the ink is dried on that Supermax. Rudy Gobert has signed his extension as well. He has a player option for 24-25. So it'll be interesting to see with the new TV deal kicking in. I believe roughly 2025 is when, if they extend, or, if Rudy Gobert works and he picks up that option for $46 million, which is highly likely at, what is he, 30 right now? So he'd be 34.
Yeah, 30.
So I think he takes that option most likely.
Most likely. Yeah.
Most likely.
Yeah.
But, so the cap, situation won't be as bad with the TV deal going up, because, this TV deal is, apparently it's going to be about 3 times the amount of what it is right now. But
Sheesh.
as you know, we're going to implement probably cap smoothings, which, but regardless,
Thank
3
God.
times the amount.
No more Mozgovs and Luol Dangs.
Absolutely. But it is one thing to keep in mind as this team continues to evolve, and it's going to be quite expensive.
Oh yeah. I mean, that is something to keep in mind. Maybe some of these cap hits are diminished a little bit in future years because of that deal. Definitely something to keep in mind. So while we're on the subject of trades, I guess we might as well discuss another big trade that was conducted here just a few days ago. This trade doesn't have the pop of pizzazz of the Gobert trade, but it's still very impactful, and it might put this team over the top as it pertains to the chase for a championship. So looking at the Malcolm Brogdon trade to the Celtics, number one, unexpected. I knew they were looking for a point guard, but I didn't think they'd be able to get a guard of the caliber of Malcolm Brogdon. Second of all, incredible value. This is the inverse of the Gobert trade. There's not a lot of value in that trade when it comes to the assets you gave up. Conversely, on this deal, excellent value. The biggest asset you gave up was arguably a first-round pick next year. So depending on how the season goes, I mean, that pick, it might not be that great, honestly. If we're looking a little bit forward. So,
they might be the number 1 seed in the East.
Right. So it's not like it's going to be a super high value pick that would be in the top 3 where you're missing out on a chance to draft, Victor, the next great draft prospect overseas. But the other assets in this deal were Aaron Naismith, Daniel Tice, Nick Stauskas, Blake Fitz, Juwan Morgan. So, none of these guys are really that impactful, or were that impactful for Boston. You're looking at the amount of minutes these guys played. Aaron Naismith played 11 minutes per game last season for the Celtics. Tice played about 18.7. Not major rotation players. They were sporadic players. And then come playoff time, they basically got cut from the rotation. They weren't really a part of those teams in the middle of the game unless somebody got hurt. So I'm not going to say they gave up nothing, but they gave up very little as it pertains to who would really play a part in their season coming up. So I was thinking about why this is all they can muster up for Brogdon. That was my first thought. And after thinking about it a little bit, I concluded that it's probably because of Brogdon's injury history. Just looking at the assortment of ailments that he's had over the past 3 years, I'm sure it gave some teams concern because Brogdon on paper is a starting caliber guard. But if you can't count on him to play more than 65 games, which is the highest that I think he's played since his rookie year, I believe, then there's a lot of risk in that kind of investment. And you're paying him over 22 million per season. So it's not like this is a guy that's on the mid-level. This is a lot of money for a guy that may or may not be available in the rotation the whole season. So for Boston, yeah, you're getting a guy that could have some injury issues. But on the flip side, you have the depth to the point where you don't have to play Brogdon 35 minutes per game the entire season. You can give him some rest days. You can limit his minutes here and there. You can keep him off the back-to-backs so that when you get to the playoffs and you really need his presence, he's going to be available for that team. So I love this deal for Boston. I love the fact that ownership is willing to invest all this money because now they're deep into the tax because they gave up somewhere in the teens as far as salary. They took back more salary than they gave out. So it's a huge investment in terms of the money, but also on court, it makes a lot of sense. So speaking of on court, what kind of impact are we looking at as far as what Brogdon could do for Boston? Because we know Boston needed a little bit of a steady hand, a good facilitator at the point guard position. I mean, it kind of looks like he fits the bill, when it comes to what they need in a playoff scenario.
Absolutely. When we were watching the playoffs, we saw at times the Boston Celtics offense really slow down. And whether it was due to turnovers, whether it was due to decision making, whether it was just due to lackadaisical decisions, they really at times shot themselves in the foot. And that's, considering they went all the way to the finals, they had a phenomenal run, but they felt like it was one piece missing. One guy who could just get into the teeth of the defense after the ball was kicked to him, or the same guy initiates a pick and roll, and just another creator, another playmaker, another passer, another guy to move, to keep the chain moving. And that's the beauty of Malcolm Brogdon. He could play on and off the ball, right? He had a down year. He shot 31% from three. The year before that, I believe he shot 38% from three. Like, he's a capable shooter. He has a pretty respectable volume, and he's a pretty good passer. And, I do think that with the amount of the ball that's going to be held by Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, that, Malcolm Brogdon, he's going to feed off of that. He's going to play probably a lot off the ball. But what I really like the most is by the time we got to the finals, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown were absolutely exhausted. So if Brogdon is healthy, this is going to be a great way for them to manage Tatum's minutes, to manage Brown's minutes through the season, because, we did see them just at times just gasping for air at the highest levels of the game. And, I'll be interested to see, obviously, he'll be coming off the bench. Marcus Smart will be starting. And I'll be interested to see if, how much they play together, because that they do work together. Both Marcus Smart and Brogdon can play both on and off the ball. So that is also a great option as well. You have Derek White coming off the bench. And when you just take a step back and think about their rotation, they have a 9-man sick rotation.
Very solid.
Nasty rotation, man. And you throw Gallo in the mix. Gallo, say what you want about his playoff performance and, his deficiencies at the highest levels of the game in terms of defense and all that kind of stuff. He's still a great player. He's still a great piece that's going to help them a ton in the regular season. And at times they need a bucket. They can rely on him a little bit, even in the playoffs as well. I think, they've really done a phenomenal job of rounding their team out. It's clear that ownership management has bought into the style of play. They know their identity. They are familiar with themselves. They are, I think honestly one of the coolest things to see in the NBA or just the team in general. You see a team own their identity, own who they are. The coach, really, obviously Ime Udoka has done a phenomenal job in Boston. But this Boston team is now paying the tax, and they have bought in and they've said, hey, this is our team. This is what we're going to do. And we're going to pay whatever we need to pay to get there. And that's awesome because at the end of the day, ownership is the greatest advantage of the NBA. And,
Bingo.
We see teams. Yep. And I'm starting to really realize that if you there are some similarities between how the Clippers are built and how the Boston Celtics are built.
That's true.
And I'm very thankful, obviously Boston, they've been willing to pay the tax in the past, but only in the right situations. But I'm glad they're taking that gamble, and it was a phenomenal trade because when I thought about what they needed in the playoffs, I thought, a guy that came to mind was Eric Gordon. If someone like Brogdon wasn't available, someone like Eric Gordon would really fit. Right? If there is anything I want to nitpick about this team, there may be just a little light on shooting, just a little, and that's really not a big deal. But I do think that they make up for it because they don't have any bad shooters on the floor.
True.
So
true.
Very excited. Very excited.
Me too. I mean, this is a legitimate team. And to build off of your point with the shooting, I mean, they can put a 5-out rotation out there, a 5-out lineup. So if you put Horford at the 5 and you want to run with Grant Williams and you want to go with Tatum and Brown and Smart or Brogdon, I mean, Smart has developed into a respectable shooter, so you can't just leave him completely alone. He's a little streaky, but I mean, he can knock down an open three. We've seen it time and time again. And then with Brogdon, you mentioned his 3-point numbers, very efficient player. I mean, this is a guy that averaged 50, 40, 90 for an entire season. So let's not forget about his ability to just be a super efficient player. I just love the fact that Brogdon is going to be able to slide back into a lower usage role, kind of like he did back in Milwaukee. Yeah. When he actually did post those numbers, 50, 40, 90. Now his usage rate goes from, it was probably in the upper 20s when he was in Indiana. It probably slides down to low 20s, 20, maybe high teens, because of all those other other guys on the team. So now he can pick and choose his spots a little bit more. I think that's why we saw some of those numbers from 3 slide down, because he had to generate a lot of offense himself for that team. Yep. Now we have other perimeter creators like Tatum and Brown and Smart and even White to an extent. He doesn't have to do all that. His minutes will probably be lower. He won't have to play as many games. So he's going to go out there. I'm guessing he's going to be back. I won't say 50, 40, 90 because that's very hard to do. But I think he's going to be in the neighborhood. Every season he's in the mid to upper 80s from the free throw line. His 3-point percentage, a few times have been in the upper 30s to 40. And then his field goal percentage is usually pretty high as well. If you go back to last season, it was about 44, 45. I think he can get back to the high 40s like he was, we saw them back in Milwaukee. So I think Brogdon is going to be a great fit for this team. I think they're going to be a great fit for him. I think they have a lot to offer each other from that perspective. But to flip it a little bit, we can't forget about Indiana and all this. It's very easy to speak on the Celtics because of where they're at in the development. But Indiana, they're kind of switching gears here a little bit. Now they have, Sabonis is gone. Brogdon is gone. Now Halliburton is their coveted piece at the guard position. And then you're looking at Miles Turner, who himself could be on the move here. He's been in trade rumors for approximately 20 or 21 years, somewhere in that range. It just seems like for every single season, he's in all the trade rumors. So I'd be surprised if that's
the year is 2080. We're still talking about
exactly. It's like Turner's been retired for about 40 years now, and he still finds himself in trade rumors somehow. It's crazy. So this team is definitely switching gears. They're in a kind of like a rebuild mode. But I think for Aaron Naismith, the key player for Indiana in this deal, has a big opportunity here.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a good shooter. I think he has potential as like a two-way wing in this league. So I'm looking at him, and I mean he's only had 2 years in the league. He's going into his third year. He's had some ups and downs, but his first season he was shooting about 37% from three, albeit on a limited sample size. It was only about 2 threes a game, but I think he could be a very strong shooter. I think his free throw percentage indicates that he can be a mid to upper 30s, 40% shooter from three. And he has the size to be a deterrent as far as guarding guys out there on the perimeter and pick and rolls and things like that. So I'm excited to see what he brings to the table for this team. Him along with Halliburton, I think they'll complement each other very well.
Ben Mathurin.
Yep, absolutely. Oh man, we can't forget about him.
Can't forget about Ben Mathurin, man. That's my guy. I think he's gonna absolutely really show out in Indiana. Him and Halliburton are gonna be a very, very fun and dynamic backcourt.
Hey, hold on to your seat, man. We're gonna get to him in just a quick second here because Summer League is next on our list.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm excited for the opportunity that Naismith has here in Indiana. I haven't heard or seen a lot of content as it pertains to his fit in Indiana, so I just wanted to point that out. That this is the guy we should forget about because he's not probably not going to be a future All-Star, not going to be one of those highlight players, but a very solid rotational piece for Indiana that I think they can build around, and a guy that can really give them some good things on both ends of the court.
And he had a great summer league last year.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
absolutely,
I think, yeah.
So I like what he brings to the table, man. But we teased it. So I think it's only right that we get into our final segment of the evening here, which is a nice little summer league preview where it starts up tomorrow afternoon. So we're on the eve of summer league. The excitement is building. Chet just dropped a 24-piece yesterday. The people are going crazy, man. We want to see these guys in action. I think it's about that time. So you have a list of guys you're excited to see. I have a list of guys. I'll go ahead and say it. Mathurin is on my list for obvious reasons. He looks like he can be an explosive guy, fill up the points in a hurry, just be one of those kind of like energy guys that just brings the whole offense to life in a system. So I guess we can start with him since we were just talking about him and his new team here. But definitely someone to keep an eye on. I haven't watched him too much, but just looking at his draft profile, the scouting report, I mean, the dude just has fire. He plays with fire. He brings the heat when it comes to putting the ball in the bucket, to just having an aggressive mentality. I think that's a good pairing with Halliburton because Halliburton is more of a methodical, slow it down, not a very athletic type guy, loves to get guys involved. He posts double-digit assists consistently. So if he's playing with Mathurin is focused on getting buckets. That's a natural combination. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think Mathurin, he brings a level of dynamism that, is he reminds me of a bit of a kind of like Ben Gordon, but he is so or Jason Richardson, he seems like the type of guy who's going to feed off of others, but really when he gets those opportunities, he's going to, he's not the greatest finisher in the world at the rim. I think that's something that he's going to need to work on, but he's a phenomenal shooter, truly a gifted shooter, whether it's off movement, spot up. And I think the biggest thing that he's going to showcase is, his ability to attack closeouts off of the kickouts that he's going to get from, Tyrese and Chris Duarte when they attack the teeth of the defense. But I think Ben is going to really be a fantastic all-around offensive force. And I do think that defensively, he's going to be, a lot of scouts rated him pretty low on that end. I see a lot of upside in that realm because, I see the intelligent the gambles that he makes, at times those gambles can come back and bite him, it happens. But I do think that his defensive IQ will catch up to his physical abilities. And, he's shown glimpses of him dialed in, hips low. And I'm going to, just be decisive and mobile and just say, hey, I'm going to stay in front of my guy, or I'm going to switch, because he is a pretty big guy. And I think he's going to be able to put on enough size to say, hey, I can guard 1 through 3 credibly. Is he going to be a lockdown defender? No, I don't think so. But he has the ability to get there. And what makes him really unique is his shot blocking ability. He's a pretty great weak side defender. So there's some really, really awesome. He has a really awesome skill set for the modern NBA, but I do think that he is going to be a phenomenal tertiary, secondary playmaker, scorer piece. And they're going to feed off of, Halliburton and him are going to feed off of each other.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a pairing I can't wait to see in action. But in the meantime, I think Mathurin is going to have a great opportunity to just fill it up, just be himself. I think that Rick Carlisle is going to realize that and allow Mathurin to be himself, make those mistakes, kind of just grow into himself, learn from that, expand off of that. And, you mentioned Chris Duarte too. I forgot all about him. Honestly, Indiana hasn't been on my mind a whole lot lately. So
I don't blame
guys
you.
Are yeah, I mean,
only for cap space reasons and Miles Turner.
Exactly. The only reason they even pop in my mind again is because you post one of your graphics and it's like, oh, Indiana's in the top 5 in cap space. Oh, they are an NBA team. That's right. I just completely slipped my mind. Sorry to all the Indiana fans out there in advance. They do have a great organization. No hate whatsoever. So I am very excited to see him in action. Another guard that is pretty electric, pretty aggressive. Reminds us of an up-and-coming star in the NBA, Jaden Ivey, man. There's something that Ivey brings to the table when it comes to his athleticism. His balance is incredible. Just the ability to put so much strain on a defense with his attacks to the rim. Of course, the question for him is going to be shooting, as it was for John Morant coming in. I see so many similarities between those two guys. I know there's been other comps thrown out. I see that every time. Similar size, similar athletic gifts, similar weaknesses with the shooting. I just see a lot of parallels between those two guys. So for Ivy, I think another fantastic pairing. Cade Cunningham, Ivy, methodical, explosive. Two very skilled players. I think they're going to play off each other very well. I honestly think Detroit got a steal at 5. I think that they were hoping that Ivy went to 5. I don't think they expected him to. But when he did, I think it was a huge opportunity that they just took advantage of immediately, obviously. Mm-hmm. And those are 2 guards in that system that I think are going to flourish. And just another cherry on top for what I think is turning out to be an excellent Detroit rebuild. I think they're doing all the right things. So Troy Weaver deserves a ton of credit because it's coming together. You can see it's almost like when you envision the end product, you're working on some kind of project and you see the picture of the completed product in your mind. Mm-hmm. And then you get to about 80% and it's not finished, but you see everything coming together. Like, that's what I was thinking about when I first came up with the idea. So I can't wait to watch him play, man. What's the over/under on the amount of highlight plays that this guy's going to have in summer league? Because it's going to be fun to watch.
It's going to be electric. And considering the fact that they were able to land Jalen Duren as well in the draft, which was a steal, truly, to walk away from the draft and say, yeah, we got Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren. I mean,
excellent draft.
Awesome stuff. And fun fact, I don't know if you know this, but Cade Cunningham is going to be playing in summer league, which is
I wasn't sure.
I saw that today. I was like, that's really interesting. Okay. But I mean, Sadiq Bey is going to be playing. Isaiah Stewart is going to be playing. So they're bringing the band back together. They may win it all, to be completely honest.
Hey, even them are OKC, man. They're breaking their actual regular season roster of summer league, and they're saying, "Hey, we're going to run the table." Pretty much.
And And it doesn't hurt because reps are great. Reps are good. And I think for a young team that's trying to build reps together, trying to build camaraderie together going into the season. And I think these teams are focused on building a culture of hard work and dedication and keeping each other accountable. But I'm really excited to see Duren and how he feeds off of the attention that Cade and Ivy bring to the table, because Duren, he's a phenomenal passer out of the short roll. He's a great defender. He's really kind of a Swiss Army knife big. I do think that when he gets to the league, his skill set will be unleashed, and with all the space that's afforded on the NBA court compared to what they play in college in terms of spacing, I think that he's really going to be well suited to thrive in Detroit.
No doubt, no doubt. So, I mean, obviously that team has a great chance of running through Summer League, grabbing that championship. But, I mean, that's not the only team that has a whole ton of recent talent to bring to the table. We can't forget about the Okc Thunder, man. On my list of players I said I was most excited to see in Summer League, I just put the whole roster. I put the whole Thunder roster because I went down, I looked at it yesterday, and I was like, okay, we got Chet, we got Pokusevski, we got Trey Mann. You just go down the list, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, all the way down the list, just guys that, okay, number one, regular season roster, rotational players, but number two, a lot of these guys are kind of have unique games. Like you look at Chet, you look at Pokusevski, the thin towers, is that a thing now? It's something I've seen float around. But, in any case, I mean, the Thunder are just stacking up on, I think, high upside, although also with a low floor. I think it's the high risk, high reward picks. But if you think about it, if just one or two of these guys pop, you're there. Like if Chet turns into what he could be, and let's say Ousmane Dieng does the same, you're really in a prime position to compete in the next 3, 4, 5+ years. So that's why I'm keeping my eye on the whole roster. Trey Mann didn't play yesterday. I was disappointed about that, health and safety protocols. But when this entire roster gets on the court, watch out. Trey Mann gets straight buckets. Chet is an enforcer. Nothing's getting past him. Pokusevski, Swiss Army knife. Ousmane Dieng, mystery box. I don't know what he's going to bring to the table for night tonight. It's just who knows. But that whole team, man, can't wait to see them in action. That is they're going to be something special, I think, here in the next few years. You just wait.
I agree. And you throw SGA on the table, and he brings it all kind of together. And yes. I'm very excited to see the SGA Chet pick and roll. Very excited.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be a beauty, man.
Yeah. It's going to be a ton of fun. But I was a bit surprised of them letting go of Isaiah Roby. Obviously, he's with the Spurs now. He got picked off waivers. He had a wonderful season. Showed a lot of talent. Showed a lot of promise. Yep. So, but at the end of the day, OKC is going to face this roster crunch, whether it's now in the future. This is a cycle that they will have to experience every year because, they will run into guys that are really good, but apparently just unfortunate. The roster crunch. You can only have a number of guys on the roster, and life happens. So exactly. I'm very fascinated to see the decision-making process of how they build this team out. And it's really interesting. I don't want to get my hopes up, but I do wonder if, obviously they want to be in the victor, sweepstakes. Who doesn't, right? Obviously you've seen the Spurs, trade DeJounte Murray to get into that race. But, I wonder if they see themselves as still in that race, if they're going to be bad, because I think they're going to be a pretty, they're going to be not a fun team to play. They weren't a fun team to play last year because, they play hard. Mark Daigneault does a, fantastic job coaching, but I think that they, might be a little too good. little.
Here's the thing about that. How good they end up being next season, I don't think it's going to come down to the players. I think it's going to come down to the guys working behind the scenes, the coaching staff, the management side. Because what do we see the last 2 seasons? The defense is really good. It carries them to maybe semi 500 record, maybe slightly below 500. So they're in the championship hunt. And what happens? SGA, you got an injury, take a few more days off.
That's true.
Let
That's
it
true.
heal. Al Horford, use your PTO, man. Don't worry about it. We don't need you the rest of the season. Go ahead and take some time off. Derek Favors, take a seat, man. Collect that check and don't worry about coming back. They intentionally hit the brakes. They have to. Because like you said, they end up winning too many games. So that's why I think that the roster is more than capable of being pretty good. Yeah. But it's all about how many minutes do the guys play. I mean, does Lou Dort get shut down in March? Does SGA get shut down again for the third year in a row? Like, that's what's going to determine if they reach 25 or 35 wins.
Yeah.
I really think that's the determining factor.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you have any other fun teams, fun prospects, fun guys you excited about in summer league?
I'll give us one more name here, man. We're gonna wrap up on this one. I can't go through this list without giving a shout out to number 27 pick by the Miami Heat, Nikola Vucevic, man. Not to be confused with Jokic. We got a different guy here. But his skill set is so interesting because that 6'10" frame, he brings a smooth shooting stroke. He brings a solid handle, high basketball IQ, just a great foundation to build off of offensively. I think with the Heat, with the way they develop players and the kind of roster that he's going to be surrounded by, I think the potential for him to be, I'm not going to jump the gun. I'm not going to say he's going to be a star, but the potential for him to be a very good NBA player is there. And I think it's very likely because, I mean, he's already figuring it out. The first game, very forgettable. Second game, slightly better at Summer League. Third game, he goes out there against the Warriors and drops the 24-piece, 9 of 16 shooting. He's already acclimating to the game. And now growth is going to not linear. He's going to have ups and downs. But I think it shows that he's a quick learner. He's already catching on. He's already figuring out what is going to carry him into the next level of basketball. Very excited to see him. He's one of the top guys on my list because he's a Miami guy. And I just think that he can end up being one of the best values in the draft. End of the first round. But the offensive package allows him to be a very, very good guy for a lot of years.
Yeah. I agree. Nikola is awesome. And I think for a team that needs another gear offensively, I think he's going to really help. Not only in terms of just, his shooting ability, creating, pick and roll. And he's a pretty solid defender. I do think that he will get in Miami's system. I do think that they're going to get him in the right spots at the right time.
Oh yeah.
And put him in a position to succeed. Especially, and it doesn't hurt that you have a perennial defensive player of the candidate, year candidate, in BAM every year. So, he's really fascinating because, I'm interested to see if his ability to create an advantage in scoring situations translates in the, in the NBA. We're seeing this in Summer League. He's doing a great job. He's figuring things out. But I'm fascinated to see because, he's pretty athletic, but he isn't the most athletic. How much of an advantage is he going to create so that he can really take advantage of his shooting, But at the end of the day, his bread and butter will be pull-up shooting, catch and shoot shooting, movement shooting, and creating off of that. So fascinating fit. I'm glad they took someone like him because I think it's going to be very fun for them.
For sure. That's it, man. A lot of times, pretty much every time, it's all about where you end up. And I think for him, it's just going to be a natural fit. So I'm really excited to see that. But that brings us to the end of our conversation here, man. I appreciate your time as always, hopping on this pod. Very excited to link up at Summer League along with the rest of the team. And like Lee mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, if you guys are in Vegas, you're checking out some games. I'm sure at several points during the Summer League run, we will be recording podcast live in the Thomas and Mack Center. So give us a shout, stop by, say what's up. We'd love to meet you. And just kind of show you what we're working on at NTC and just continue to grow the network. We just want to meet as many people as we can that are also interested in the NBA and how it works on a really deep level.
Yep.
And on that note, the Sports Business Classroom will be happening at Vegas. So as of this recording, the registration is closed, but they do have other virtual courses during the year that you can get involved in, like the Draft Academy, the GM Academy. Those will be coming up later in the year. So be sure, if you want to get involved with that, to check out sportsbusinessclassroom.com. All those resources are going to become available before you know it. And if you just want to get a conversation going and just figure out what they're all about, definitely check out their website. They're going to have some great things going. And who knows, if you're at Vegas, maybe you can talk to one of them and they can get you set up and get your journey into basketball kickstarted, get off to the right foot, because that means everything in a business like this. So hope you enjoyed this installment, guys. We're logging out of this podcast, but like we mentioned before, we'll be at Summer League recording some podcasts. So check us out and check out notradeclause.com as we continue to make updates as more trades come in, and hopefully, fingers crossed, the big one comes in here sooner rather than later, so we can kind of, get that out of the way. But keep it locked. We have a lot more content coming. So until next time, guys, we're signing out. We'll see you on the next one, and